Hello, good afternoon, or Namaste Agra. I'm so happy to be here. I'm also happy to be here as a part of the Living History program for Amar Ujala with somebody whose name is already a big part of history, is a big part of Afghanistan's history, is also a big part of Afghanistan and India's history. It has been a pleasure to know you, President Karzai, and to understand your view of the world and to understand from a little bit of what President Karzai has said. And he will speak himself about how sometimes his views seem different. Sometimes he's called the quintessential politician because he has changed his views. But at the end of the day, if national interest is what guides you, if national interest is what is the one constant in what you're thinking, then everything else can change because the world is dynamic, the world changes. But your views still stick to that particular principle. So without further ado, if I could ask you, President Karzai, to speak about Afghanistan and India's friendship, not just from today, but from historical times, and I understand you have yourself seen some of it in the last few days.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My dear friends in India, Amar Ujala, IPCS, Honorable Mr. Haider, my own fellow Afghans with me, our ambassador, Mrs. Suhasini Haider, one of the best stars of India's journalism and media. Ladies and gentlemen, there is so much love that India has given Afghanistan and the Afghan people. And there is also on a personal level so much love and affection that India has given me. Not when I was the president, it was much less then. But before, I was the president when I was a student in Simla, and after I retired as the president, India showed its real jawhar, its real value, its real niceness. My contacts as an individual Afghan are as old with India as any other Afghans in many ways. From the centuries of living together, the two peoples, from centuries of common culture and heritage, from the sorrows and joys that we have shared, and from the recent Indian-Afghanistan friendship that culminated in a magnificent way in India providing all it could to the Afghan people, to the upliftment of Afghan youth by better education, to the provision of the means for empowerment of Afghan people, men and women, to the reconstruction assistance, to the deepening of relations between the two countries, for which we in Afghanistan are immensely grateful. India traditionally is not a donor country. India's needs were great at the time when Afghanistan began its new life in 2002. But India went out of its way to help Afghanistan by now with over $2.5 billion of assistance to our country. That's a lot of money, ladies and gentlemen. And that assistance was, fortunately for us in Afghanistan, spent wisely and properly. in providing us electricity, generation, education, thousands of students, schools and clinics and irrigation systems and the construction and the completion of the Salma Dam, which are major infrastructural projects. As a matter of fact, India is the only donor country to Afghanistan that has engaged in real economic infrastructure assistance to Afghanistan, which is immensely valuable for us. It's immensely valuable. Now, you have heard of Afghanistan's troubles, beginning with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan to today, and the years that followed after the withdrawal of the Soviet Union from Afghanistan and the arrival of another creeping invasion from a neighboring country, and the arrival of extremism and terrorism, and then the way it affected the world, and then the incident of the tragedy, rather I should say, of September 11 that led to the United States and its allies coming to Afghanistan, which indeed at that time in 2001 led to the liberation of Afghanistan, for which the Afghan people were grateful and are grateful. But subsequent to that, as we started a new life with tremendous hope, with tremendous opportunities awaiting us as well, we saw that the fundamental objective of the United States and the Western allies with them, and the rest of the world that shared this objective with them and joined and helped in this objective with them, the defeat of extremism and terrorism did not happen. Initially they were defeated, Afghanistan was liberated, life began, Afghanistan went to be a democratic country, a flourishing country, education to the masses of Afghanistan, and lots of other developmental activities that we welcomed. But in the area of security, the United States and its allies unfortunately did not deliver what we expected of them, what the world expected of them. The primary reason was that beyond our borders, sanctuaries were created again for extremism, and war and destruction and bombs were sent to Afghanistan. The US ignored that sanctuary. The US did not do what we, the Afghan people, expected of it to do with regard to it. Rather, they began to exert pressure and military means, application of those military means on the Afghan people, on Afghan villages, on Afghan lives, the bombardment of our homes, the killing of our people in the name of the fight against terrorism, slowly led us to where we are, where Afghanistan is neither secure nor is the region secure, but there is a lot more extremism and terrorism prevalent in the whole region than Afghanistan alone. This, of course, led to major differences between me and the US government. Probably that's what Swatini Haidar was referring to, the changes in my views. Indeed, the fundamental to that is the national interest of countries, and that national interest in Afghanistan was not seen to from our perspective, from the perspective of the Afghan people, and that led to major differences between me and the US government that eventually led me to speak publicly, vocally, clearly, and very critically of the United States of America. And for those of you who don't know, that eventually also led me not to sign the bilateral security agreement with the United States, because I did not see the US presence in Afghanistan as leading to the defeat of extremism or terrorism, or as leading to peace and security in Afghanistan. Rather, I began to believe deeply that the US presence in Afghanistan was causing more extremism, whether by design or default. That's a different question, whether it was a design or the unintended consequence of their actions is a subject to be discussed. But I began to believe that their presence was not leading to the defeat of extremism or terrorism, that in fact it was adding to it in large proportions, in that Afghanistan will continue to suffer. And that Afghanistan, by this behavior of the United States in Afghanistan and the region, is not going to be a place of cooperation between neighbors and nations, but rather we are becoming a place of competition between big powers, and that's what exactly no nation wants. Indefinitely, Afghanistan doesn't want that either. So that was the difference that was referred to earlier. I must remain focused on India-Afghanistan and the deep friendship between the two countries. In my case, personally, this friendship started, as I mentioned, like all other Afghans, by the cultural bonds between us, but also by the fact that I became a student in India. I came to Delhi in 1976 after I finished my high school, and it was the month of July, and it was very warm for a Kabuli bag. Kabul is cool, 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 and Delhi was warm, warm, warm. So I told my cousin who was studying in the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, I said, isn't there a cooler place that we can go to? He said, well, there's a place called Simla. People say it's a very nice place and a cool place. And we decided to go there. We took the train at night from Delhi to Kalka, and from Kalka, that small toy train, to Simla. That was a memorable ride. It's July, monsoons have just begun. You can imagine what the scene is. The clouds and the bushes and the greenery in the rain, and the little train moving slowly, slowly up towards Simla, passing all those stations, going to Simla. And when we arrived in Simla, we straight went to the university from the station. And those of you who have been to Simla, I hope all of you have been to Simla. And those of you who have been to Simla, when you go to the university, there are two ways from the station. You either go through the Vice-Regal Lodge, which few people do, because there is a gate, and those who are not familiar lose their way. They can't find their way to the university. I can find my way through the Vice-Regal Lodge to the university. Or you can take the regular little road that goes to the university, covered with trees in which langurs are playing all the time, jumping from one tree to another tree. And when we were going to Simla, to the university, there is rain is there. Not rain exactly, drizzle is there. Light rain. It doesn't make you wet, but it makes the ground wet and gives you that fragrance of the monsoon, of Barsat. And as I'm walking to the university, I didn't tell my cousin. I told myself, I said, I'm not going back. University or no university, I'll stay here. I won't go back. And that's what I did. I stayed on, and I had a wonderful stay there. Those were my formative years in many fundamental ways, because I was a boy of 18 years of age, very impressionable, and this lovely town, the British history of the town, and then the Indian independence movement that I studied during my college days, and all that, and then passing by on the ridge in Simla, there is a statue of Mahatma Gandhi there. I'm sure it is still standing there. And passing by the statue of Mahatma Gandhi and thinking of him and his principles and his values and his humanity, all of those, and the love that the people of Simla gave me, and the affection that they gave me, and the ease of life that I had there was fantastic. Was fantastic. One day, just as I arrived, this is 4th, 5th day of my arrival there. It was staying in a nice hotel there called Fontainebleau, belonging to a very lovely family, Dr. Seth, who had passed away. Someone told me that you must go and register in the Foreigners Registration Office. I will cut it short. Since you asked me about my links with India, I have to do justice to my links. I walked out to go to the Foreigners Registration Office, but I did not know where it was. So from the opposite direction, a very handsome man came. He was walking towards me with a stick in his hand, a very smart, very handsome Sardarji. And when he came close, I don't know in which language, how I asked him, because I could not speak English. And then he said, okay, come with me. And as we were walking, this very handsome Sardar Sahib told me, where are you from? I said, from Afghanistan. And then he said, oh, you speak Farsi? I said, yes. And he spoke to me a few words of Farsi. And then he said, do you speak Pashto also? I said, yes. Then he said, really? In Pashto, he told me, really you speak Pashto? I said, yes, I speak Pashto. Then he began to speak to me in wonderful Pashto. Wonderful. He was one of those Sardarjis who had left Mardan after the partition, who had come to India, first to Pathankot and then to Simla, and who was incidentally the monitor of Afghanistan's radio. This was the late Mr. Ajaib Singh, who I remember very, very well. That's how I began my acquaintance with life and with Simla. Anyway, I will come to the story that I want to tell you. So someone told me, go to the Foreigners Registration Office. I went there and he waited for me, and I became a regular visitor to the Foreigners Registration Office. 1 year I went and registered, the second year I went and registered, the third, fourth year I became a Simlaite. I didn't care about the Foreigners Registration Office. So I didn't go. And the police officer told me one day, walking, said, Hamid Sahab, aap kyun nahi aate, aap register kyun nahi karte? I told him, okay, karuga, kuch din aunga. But I didn't go again. I didn't go again. Finally, one day, when I reached my master's degree, I was in MA. When I left my class, I saw him sitting on the stairs of the university, of the political science department. And I told him, sir, आप इधर क्या कर रहे? कहते, तुम तो नहीं आ रहे हो, मैं आ गया हूँ. दे दो passport, मैं इधर ही stamp करूँगा. That's how nice it was there. And that is the friendship and the values that I've taken of deep humanity, deep love, and lots of other things that are good. To be good, to be nice, the value that India enshrines and that reflects to the rest of the world. Gladly I have loved and taken, and that's a deep bond between me and India personally. Also, that is a deep bond in many different ways between Afghanistan and India has proven its part. We've also tried our best to prove from our side in Afghanistan friendship to India, and we shall continue that. And thank you very much.
Thank you, President Karzai, and thank you for giving us that glimpse of your years in Simla. And within your friendship with India is also India's friendship with Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
And there is, as you said, this historical aspect to it as well. But just to start with, I want to ask you about what happened when you left India. Because I've read in the New Yorker review profile of you where it says that when he left India, Hamid Karzai was a changed boy. You had come here maybe in your late teens, just
17 and a half, yes.
17 and a half. When you went back, you actually became part of a rebel movement. You
Yes.
became part of much larger causes, if you like. How do you think India changed you, and what did you do after?
Well, when I left India, it was to join the Afghan resistance against the former Soviet Union, who had invaded our country, and to become part of the Afghan resistance, part of the Afghan Mujahideen, as they were known.
Part of the Mujahideen.
Part of the Mujahideen against the former Soviet Union, and that's what I did. Of course, this sense of freedom and independence is so inner to the Afghan self, and that's what we are known for around the world. And that was shared badly when we were invaded. So I went to join the Afghan resistance.
Right.
In Pakistan, I went to Pakistan.
You were in Pakistan, and then eventually you went back to Afghanistan.
We were in Pakistan till the Soviet Union was there. When the Soviet Union withdrew, we went, all the Mujahideen organizations, back to Kabul to form the Mujahideen government in Afghanistan, and that subsequent events, you know.
After 9/11, there was a moment when everyone was wondering who the next leader of Afghanistan could be. What was that moment for you when you knew that your destiny was going to be something larger? I know that you were fighting in the hills at one particular and in fact were without food and weren't able to even exit from that place near Kandahar. Tell us about that. What was that moment like? Because after that, your life changed and history changed as well.
A lot of it, yes, a lot of it. Well, as the Soviet Union withdrew from Afghanistan, as I mentioned in my remarks briefly, we fought the Soviet Union for our independence, for our values as a nation. But when the Soviet Union left, we went to Afghanistan. Afghanistan did not become independent. Unfortunately, our neighbor from Pakistan began to use the opportunity that they had taken because of the arrival of millions of refugees there, because of the US assistance to them, to take Afghanistan as theirs, to turn us into a subsidiary of Pakistan. And for that, they did all they could to undermine the Afghan institutions, Afghan state, Afghan society, Afghan moderation. And to do that, they used extremism as the tool, the best tool available to them. And that extremism finally led to things that you heard in the United States, the tragedy of September 11, and then the US joined in. Of course, all along these years, the United States was an ally of Pakistan, including in the use of extremism and terrorism as a tool. But we thought that was a byproduct of their opposition to the Soviet Union. So when Afghanistan did not become free, and when Pakistanis came and the rule of the Taliban came, visibly a Pakistani presence in Afghanistan was felt. And that led me as an Afghan again to work for our independence once again. It was this that led me to go inside Afghanistan and to campaign against this creeping invasion. And before that, of course, I had been going all over the world in the context of the former king of Afghanistan's three-point formula for Afghanistan, to introduce that and to seek Afghanistan's independence and reassertion of self-identity and self-determination through the convening of the Lower Jaragah of Afghanistan, the Grand Council of Afghanistan. That had introduced me to the world. I was also before the deputy foreign minister, so the countries knew me. India knew me, and so did other neighbors and Europeans. And while I was in the mountains of Afghanistan campaigning against the Taliban, there was this UN meeting in Bonn, and that Bonn meeting, then the international community and subsequently Afghans also who were there decided that I become the leader of the country.
All right. Also, what you were famous for at that time was part of the campaign over the Bamiyan, when the Taliban decided to destroy the Bamiyan. Now, we've had in Agra too, we've had our own debates here. How important are our monuments? How important is the Taj Mahal, for example? इस पे भी चर्चा हुई है काफी यहाँ पे. And I'm slipping into Hindi because I know that you...
Go ahead.
So my question really to you is, why is it so important for Afghanistan as an Islamic state, or Islamic nation, I should use that word,
that's a very good
to
question.
keep it, to preserve its heritage?
That's a very good question. The Buddha statues of Bamiyan were there for 1400 years after Islam. They were pre-Islamic. But when Islam came to Afghanistan, the Buddha statues were there for 1400 years. All sorts of kings, rulers, invasions, Genghis Khan came, the Mughals came to Afghanistan, eventually came to India, and we witnessed yesterday these massive, magnificent historic sites in Fatehpur Sikri and Taj Mahal. My God, imagine Taj Mahal. I mean, you can't ever believe that mankind can build a thing like that again. I hope not, because I want this to be the only one. The only one. So Afghanistan also had massive historic sites, a deep history. You dig any part of the country, something comes up. Just south of Kabul in Logar, there is huge Buddhist site there, which is now we're trying to preserve. We believe that this was not because of extremism or terrorism, the destruction of the Buddhas. We believe, clearly, I believe in it very, very much, that this was a political act, that the Buddhas were destroyed in order to deprive Afghanistan of its sense of culture and identity.
India and Afghanistan ties, of course, go back to not just the Buddha, before that. In between, we've seen so much in common when it came to the British.
Yeah, we fought them better.
We were more successful than
we fought them better. You gave them 200 years time.
And as we sit in Agra, isn't Agra the capital once of Afghanistan in a sense?
No. Agra was the capital of the Mughal rule, who were, by all accounts, Indians. I don't know, your historians may counter me on this, but I think the Mughals were, they became Indians. If they were not originally Indian, but when they came to India, they became Indians. They did not aspire to go back to Tashkent or Samarkand or back to Kabul or to other parts of this region. They became Indian, they married in India. Your famous queens of Akbar were Indian. Jodhabai was her name, right? And there were so much more. So I think the Mughal rule in India and shows the strength of India. The strength of India in the sense that it is really a cauldron of amalgamation of people. People come here and they dissolve in here, they become Indian, they take the good of the essence of India, they also add to it what they have of their own. So what you see in Taj Mahal is that mixture. What you see in Fatehpur Sikri is very much that mixture. Akbar has created those pillars. Down there is the Islamic form of art, and then you have the tulips, the Indian Hindu form of art, and then you have even the Jewish and the Christian. So that is the strength of India. Very few nations have this ability, very few nations have this strength, and you should be proud that you have that.
And we are. The reason I am trying to take you into so much history is to try and understand, when we talk about India-Afghanistan friendship, we all know there's something more to it than normal friendship. People will say...
Look, of course there's more to it. Ustad Bismillah Khan is from Afghanistan, Shahnai, the greatest of the world. Ustad Bade Ghulam Ali Khan is from Afghanistan. Both of them are from Ghazni. They have gone from Ghazni. They are Afghans, but they found their talents here in India. That's the point I'm making.
All right.
And should I go more recently to Shah Rukh Khan and the Dilip Kumars and Raj Kapoor?
Are you going to hold them all?
They're all Afghans, by the way. We have had a good contribution to your culture as well.
But my question is, when you go on the streets, and this is across both India and Afghanistan, there is a smile that comes to people's face if you ask them about the other country.
Yes, sure.
Now, what makes this more interesting is we are both separated. We don't actually have any, shall we say, borders that are governed by us in common.
It's only the past 60 years.
Yeah, and we have in fact a country in between us.
Yes.
That we both have a lot of problems with. If you go and ask the average Afghan or you ask the average Indian what they think of Pakistan or the state of Pakistan and how it has behaved, it's a very negative reaction. And yet Indians and Afghans are able to communicate perfectly well.
Well, India, Pakistan and Afghanistan are the same cultural, the same soil, the same blend. We are the same people. So are the Pakistani people. When you go to the Pakistani society, it's very much like any one of us. Their love for Indian movies is a lot more than the love for the moviegoers here in India. I remember when I was younger, in very, very young teenage years, I remember a lot of our relatives and people who coming from Pakistan would go to just see movies in Kabul, Indian movies. Those days, Sholay was there, and Guide was there, and Dil Diya Datliya was there. They would come see those lovely movies, and actually they would go from one cinema hall to another cinema hall to another cinema hall to another cinema hall during the whole day for 3-4 days. So that linkage is there. Politics is a separate thing. And it's the politics in Pakistan that has separated us, not the culture, not the people.
So you're saying that despite everything, Indians have always known that, say, Afghans culturally and politically have meant well.
The Afghan-India relationship is different. It has layers. It has been built over centuries. It has matured into the modern times, into the modern needs of the two countries. Now, some of those needs are dictated by history and civilizational links, those old bounds. Some of those needs are dictated by the trends of the times and the need of the times. Today, we are affected by extremism and terrorism. And we know that, unfortunately, extremism and terrorism is the product of a policy that the US and Pakistan developed together against the former Soviet Union. And that the US used to defeat the Soviet Union, the Pakistan government used to weaken us and to weaken India. This has become a common objective for the two countries to resist and to defeat towards a better, more civilized life. And then we have the dangers that we face also as a consequence of this. So it so happens that while we are bounded together by all those roots, we also are threatened together by the circumstances of wrong, faulty politics.
So you do think that it is possible for Afghanistan, Pakistan and India to live peacefully at some point in the future? I ask you this because, again, Agra is a very important place. What is it known for? The Agra summit. The desire for peace, but the fact that the talks didn't produce any. Do you still have hope?
I'm a very optimistic person. I have seen in Pakistani leaders immense desire to improve relations with India. I've seen Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who I respect very, very much, a very decent man, a man who genuinely wanted to improve relations with India and also with Afghanistan. I've seen also efforts before that. I've seen also these efforts in India. Your own Prime Minister went on a very short notice as he was invited by Mia Sahib to visit Lahore from Afghanistan. I'm optimistic, and I'm of a nature of a person who seeks this, not war, not conflict, not divisions, not separation, but to be together and to live together. In other words, wisdom would also ask us to do the same. We should be a wiser people. We should live like what the Europeans are doing now. They have a lot more difficulty in terms of historic relations between themselves than we ever had in this region. Look at the massive wars that they had between themselves. But they now live in an organized, determined way towards a productive relationship, and that's what we can do. I know India has the strength. I know Afghanistan has the desire. I also hope that in Pakistan, the Pakistani government will do that. Now, we must make a distinction here. When I say Pakistan, I never mean the people of Pakistan. The people of Pakistan have been the kindest of people to the Afghan people. And they mean very much the same towards India. When I say Pakistan, I mean the intelligence and the military there. So we hope that the intelligence and the military would understand that the future can be better and that they will act towards it.
All right. Let's come to the present very quickly, because I know you also want to talk about the future, and we do want to try and get questions in from the audience as well. When you were president, As you said, you did not give United States, which was really, really keen and was your original ally, which
Yes,
is,
yes.
in a sense, put you in that place.
Yes.
You didn't want to sign the strategic partnership with them. But out of all the countries, it was India that had not really given too much by way of development aid compared to, say, what a Germany or a UK had done. It hadn't helped in peacekeeping. It hadn't provided any military hardware, despite I know how many times that you
I asked for it, yes.
you had come to ask for it. And even so, you chose India as your first strategic partner for Afghanistan.
It is.
Why was that?
Because it is a first strategic partner. It's, look, this partnership is both sentimental and practical. We designed the India-Afghanistan relationship from the perspective of Afghanistan. We designed it in such a way that India become the first strategic partner with Afghanistan. We wanted to have, now quite separate from the civilizational, cultural, emotional bounds that we have. There was also a very cold political calculus behind what we were doing in Afghanistan to be friends with India. So the two of us can together, by the means that we have available between the two of us, be able to bring to our countries security and a better future. So it was a calculated move.
Right. Did you ever think that India should perhaps do what the US still asks us to do, which is to send troops into Afghanistan?
No, we understand when we say we calculated, when you calculate, you take everything into account. We knew India's limitations in its ability to provide us military hardware. We knew India's limitation in not being able to provide us as much militarily as the former Soviet Union did, the Russians did, or the Americans did in their own in their own way. But it was not, we were not having an unrealistic expectation of India. For us, it was, you see, with the Americans and the others, it's a fast movement, it's a sprint. What is a sprint? A fast walk. With India, it's a steady, slow walk. It's towards a longer future, over there, beyond that wall. That is the thing. With America, we run to this chair. With India, we run beyond those walls. That was the calculation. Did I make my point?
I think you did.
Okay.
Because there is this sense still about India, I understand, in Afghanistan. I remember when the dam in Herat was inaugurated. Just before that, Afghans, and despite all the security risks, Afghans stood with an Indian tricolour. That was a long Indian tricolour that went around the streets of Herat as well. What is it in modern times that can drive India-Afghan relations? Is it just about the kind of mutual interest, healthcare, education? Or
well, mutual interest would describe the whole thing, mutual interest. Mutual interest means cultural, mutual interest means old links, mutual interest means today, mutual interest means also the walk to the future. So it was a relationship that we believe is fundamental to Afghanistan's interests. This will include everything. As India's abilities increase, as India's prosperity increases, which fortunately is the case, so will Afghanistan's demand, so will Afghanistan's engagement, so will Afghanistan's, so will India's responses. So it's cumulative and long term.
You have to teach us what that special ingredient is, because with our other neighbors we don't have quite such a solid friendship in terms of with Nepal, with Bangladesh, with Sri Lanka, with Pakistan, with the Maldives now. India has had problems. What is the secret to this good neighborly relationship?
Well, from all these countries, mention a few famous people in your history. And from Afghanistan, you can mention hundreds in your history. Vice versa. Take in arts, take it in literature, take it in has your biggest writer, Tagore, has written about Kabul and Kabuliwala.
Right across the country.
Has he written about Washington Wala? No. Or any other Wala? No. He's written about Kabuliwala. So it's that whole thing. I mean, when I say whole thing, if I go into this description, it will take me to tomorrow morning to keep talking about what this whole thing is. So it's this fundamental knowing one another, being the same in lots of ways, and a perception of the future that we share together. And that perception of the future is a prosperous region, a region that's doing well, a region that's peaceful, a region that's free from extremism and terrorism, a region that looks towards a better living condition for the masses of this region, Afghanistan and India, and also very much Pakistan and the Pakistani people. And that is what we should be working towards. I mean, and there is no alternative but to work for that.
All right. Let's move then to a relationship that hasn't worked. And, you know, I called you a politician earlier, or said that people call you a politician, because you look at your career. You, as you said, were in Pakistan fighting the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. And yet today you speak about a better relationship with Russia for Afghanistan.
Yes.
You were there in Afghanistan as president. Originally you were made leader by the United States.
Yes, yes.
Yet today you don't just say that the US has treated Afghanistan badly, but you warn even India not to get too close to the US.
Oh yes, very much. I said, Babuji dire channa pyar mein zara samajhna. Bade dhoke his raah mein. That's what I'm telling you.
But where did the dhoka in your career, in your life come from? Why did relations with the US go wrong?
I will ask a question. What are we known for in Afghanistan? In the perception of India, what are we known for in Afghanistan? A country that fights foreigners and foreign rule. Isn't that true? That's how you perceive us. Afghans don't allow foreigners. You know the story of the British. You know the story of the Soviets.
The graveyard of empires.
The graveyard of empires. But these people, the Afghan people, wholeheartedly, the greater majority of the Afghan people wholeheartedly welcomed the Americans and their allies in Afghanistan. For the first time in our history, we welcomed a foreign force. Why did we welcome that foreign force? Because the Afghan people felt that this foreign force had been hurt by the tragedy of September 11, in that circumstances were such that those forces that could have caused this harm came from this region, though we believe it was not from Afghanistan, that the US was right in that while it was right, it was also coming to help Afghanistan free itself from that creeping invasion from a neighboring country. And it worked perfectly well. How could the US succeed in a month and a half of moving that government, in moving the Pakistani forces, in establishing a new order without the cooperation of the Afghan people? This was this great expectation, and which led us to immense cooperation between Afghanistan and the United States, and it worked very well for a while. 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005 were perfect years in our cooperation. They delivered on what they had promised. The Afghans delivered what we had promised. The rest of the world delivered what they promised. Afghanistan practically very much became a place of cooperation between civilizations. The Muslim countries helped, the Christian countries helped, India helped, Japan helped, China came on board. The only country with whom we soon began to have difficulty was Pakistan. And the US said the same thing. So we became a place of cooperation. Russia came and helped very, very much together with China and everybody else. Slowly, slowly we saw trouble. Bombs coming, suicide bombs coming, insecurity coming, all of that coming.
So the situation in Afghanistan got better until
Got better to 2004 and 5. We had our parliamentary elections, we had our presidential elections. Women returned to workforce, into education, into rights, all sorts of things, all sorts of social upliftment elements did arrive in Afghanistan. After 2005, we began to see bombs coming, suicide bombs coming, activities coming, and we also learned that the US was doing things that we found strangely shocking to us. Why are they barging into Afghan homes at night? Why are they intimidating families at night? Why do they insult an elderly man in front of his daughters and wife going to their home at night? Why are they taking prisoners into Bagram, into other American bases? Why are they bombing Afghan villages? I did not immediately start criticizing the United States. I kept telling the US quietly behind closed doors for years to stop its bad behavior and to recognize that extremism and terrorism was not in Afghanistan but beyond our borders in Pakistan. That Pakistan is their ally, that they should stop their ally from misconduct towards them and towards us. But the US ignored us. They kept providing money to Pakistan. President Trump announced in his tweet that the US had given in the past 16 years $33 billion to Pakistan while they were bombing Afghan villages in the name of the fight against extremism. This double standard, this duality in behavior led me eventually to begin to criticize the US, because I felt I came to a point where I thought to myself that probably talking decently with America doesn't help. That it's a big power, it is holding guns and things, and that it likes the same language. That it understands that language only. So I began to, without a gun, confront them and stop them. And the only way was publicly. Now, I'll give an example. If a big bully, a big 30-year-old man with guns and money in his pocket is beating a boy of 7 or 8 years old in the street, the only way that boy can rescue himself is by crying loud. So people will get around him and the bully will be ashamed into good behavior. That's what I tried with the US.
There's even a famous saying, story about you in the White House.
Yes.
Where you had an open confrontation with the Vice President.
Which one? You mean Biden?
That's right.
Oh, it was not in the White House. That gentleman has made a mistake there. It was not in the White House. It was in the Afghan presidential palace. It was in Arab.
Oh.
We had a dinner, and the conversation went very rough. And I told him, look, there's a lot coming from Pakistan. He said, he suddenly got very angry and threw the what is that thing called, serviette on the table and said, Mr. President, Pakistan is 50 times more important for us than Afghanistan.
How did you react?
I laughed at him.
Well, today it seems as if the tables are completely turned. Mr. Trump, as you said, tweeted on New Year's Day and said that we have had enough of the doublespeak from Pakistan. We are going to take some measures. They've taken measures financially. They have cut down on aid to Pakistan for military. We are now understand that diplomats will be curtailed, their movement will be curtailed in Washington. And yet you don't seem convinced that the US is taking real action against Pakistan. Why is that?
No. Real action means results for us. We have seen none of that. We have seen more violence, we have seen more destruction of Afghanistan, we have seen more misery for the Afghan people, and more extremism arriving. So we cannot trust words anymore. We are mature enough not to go for words. And that's exactly my advice to India. We should look for results, and the results are not there yet.
Results aren't there yet. Today, in fact, tragically, 31 people have died in Kabul.
Again.
While they were trying to register for their vote. What is the group behind this? Because this time we have heard it is ISIS that is taken responsibility.
Now, how come ISIS is there? Is exactly the point that I'm making. ISIS did not emerge during the Taliban government. ISIS did not emerge during my government when I had massive confrontation with the US. ISIS emerged in the past 40 years and during the maximum presence of the US military and intelligence in Afghanistan. And while the US is there in the name of fight against extremism, how come ISIS has emerged? Who created ISIS? This is a legitimate question that we should ask in Afghanistan, and this is a legitimate question that you should ask in India and in the rest of the world.
Who did create it?
That's the point. While the US is in Afghanistan, while our airspace is in the hands of the US, while our ground is overseen by the US, while the US military is in charge of the fight against extremism, it is during the campaign of the United States in the name of extremism and terrorism, and when they are fully in control, that Daesh has emerged. How come? Who did it?
I asked you earlier about your change in position on Russia.
Yes.
Now this seems particularly stark, given, as I said, that you fought the Soviet invasion. So many Afghans gave their lives at that time.
Yes.
And yet today you are quoted as saying that only Russia can help Afghanistan at this time.
What I said was that Afghanistan needs to be a place of cooperation, not confrontation between big powers. That Afghanistan needs the cooperation of its neighbors. Neighbors are Russia, India, China, Iran. How can Afghanistan be good, peaceful, or developing if Afghanistan is the site, the place of confrontation between the United States and these major powers of the world? These major countries are not only major powers of the world, they are also neighbors of Afghanistan. Don't we have the right to be good with our neighbors, to seek the support of our neighbors? And do we in Afghanistan want Afghanistan to become a place of confrontation for the United States for the promotion of its interests? Or do we want Afghanistan to be a place where they all cooperate like they did during my government? That's what I've been asking for, and that's what I'm seeking. That's a legitimate thing, and I'll keep doing it more loudly.
Now, I know that you in fact came for Prime Minister Narendra Modi's swearing in. You have been in touch with him, you've spoken to him. Yet in India, it seems as if our foreign policy has moved. That today we do see Pakistan and perhaps China as threats to India, although today, just half an hour ago, India has announced a new summit between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping this week.
Which is good.
And we have also seen the relationship with Russia strained in the last few years a little bit. What is the advice that you would give as a friend to India? What should India do in this situation?
I have been a tremendously vocal proponent of regional cooperation. When I got disappointed with the United States in its activity in Afghanistan, I began very deeply to believe that we must address our own issues ourselves. That we cannot depend on countries 10,000 miles away from us to resolve our issues, even if those are created by them originally, that we should address it ourselves. And that we have all the tools available, intellectual and practical, in our hands to do that. India is a great economy, growing, and a deeply thinking country. It has all the abilities to do that. China is the second biggest economy of the world and an ancient civilization as well, just like India. Russia is a great power. It has been one of the biggest superpowers of the world in the form of the Soviet Union. Before that, it was the Russian Tsar and the Russian Empire. Today, too, Russia is a huge country and a close country with India traditionally and historically. And how can you have peace in any part of this region, if not the world, if these three countries don't cooperate and are not on good terms? It will be naive and destructive of one to wish for non-cooperation between these countries. I very strongly believe that a Russia-China cooperation is in the best interests of India and China, and I've been publicly promoting this idea, and for them to cooperate with Afghanistan. And I very deeply believe that India's cooperation with China is in the same way, and with Russia is in the same way, that these three powers must cooperate, must work together, and bring a difference not only to themselves, to the region, but also to the global community. I'm a great believer in this, and I will keep pushing for this.
I have to ask, since everything you've said is actually the opposite perhaps of the public positions of the Afghan government today, have you gone from being the former president of Afghanistan to being the leader of the opposition in a sense?
No, I don't believe in those things, no. I will endorse any good policies and actions of the Afghan government, but we are suffering from war, we are suffering from bombs. Just today we had 31 of our citizens killed in the name of Daesh. I want peace for Afghanistan, and I have begun to believe deeply inside me that we cannot have peace in Afghanistan unless we are helped by the region, and unless the United States does two things. One, tell us why it is failing. What is the reason that it's failing? It must be a reason. Or begin to cooperate with the region and let Afghanistan have peace.
Right. Let me ask you then and come back to where we started when you were a boy leaving Simla. In a sense, you've over the decades lost so many members of your family. You lost your father when you were very, very young, all to violent acts. None of them was, when you look back and you have, I know, a very young little daughter, do you have regrets about your own life?
3 daughters. Regrets?
The youngest is 4.
No. I've won the 2, then the other 4, then 6, and the boys 11.
Okay.
Regrets? Yes. Regrets in the fact that for so much that Afghanistan has sacrificed, we still don't have peace. Our children are still in fear, our children are still dying. The example is again today. 31 of us killed trying to register for elections. How much of that blame comes to us is ours to take and be responsible for. The rest of it goes to those who came to Afghanistan in the name of the fight against extremism, but did not end extremism, added to it. And we see the pain of it every day, like we did just today. That is my difference with the United States. That is my opposition to the US. That is my regret.
Ladies and gentlemen, could we have a round of applause? President Karzai, you really are, as they say, a living history. If I may, could we ask the audience if they have a few questions?
Of course.
Can I just see with a show of hands? I see a few. You want to start here? I'll ask Vinodji to just.
Good evening, everyone. So we were discussing politics, and in India we are very fond of reading about politics, be it our own or be it our neighbors. So about Pakistan's situation, which every Indian is very concerned about, and so is Afghanistanis and the Indians, the growing proximity with China in the coming years, and presently the Pakistan and China proximity. Do you think that will change? That will make US change its course of action towards the India-Pakistan-Afghanistan region? Do you think it's a fair question, sir?
Proximity between India and China?
No. The proximity between China and Pakistan.
What does the CPEC mean for India?
Oh. The Belt and Road Initiative.
Right. I get you. Right, I get you. Well, this is a massive economic project. This is a question that nowadays we are asked very often. The One Belt, One Road project is a massive economic project and very futuristic by China. It's an economic project, and as an economic project, we should all support it and welcome it because it brings integration and prosperity is possible there. India has the connectivity project. China's project is One Belt, One Road. India's is the connectivity to Central Asia project, which should run through Afghanistan. But the difficulty, as Ms. Haidar earlier referred to, is Pakistan's non-availability in cooperation towards this project. So India and Afghanistan don't connect, and India does not connect to Central Asia. But because Pakistan and China are friends, that has made China to link through the One Belt, One Road, and especially the CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor project is a major one that leads to Gwadar. The U.S. position towards this project, to the extent that I know, I believe is one in which they seek their own interest, which any nation would do. But I don't think that U.S. relations with Pakistan have undergone a drastic change. No. Because U.S.-Pakistani relationship from the very beginning, since the creation of Pakistan and from SEATO and CINTO and their cooperation against the former Soviet Union, was security-oriented, never economic-oriented. The Pakistani state institutions, the military, were in the service of U.S. objectives. And I believe that service is still being provided. So for as long as the U.S. needs that service from Pakistan, no matter what happens between China and Pakistan or Pakistan and India, the U.S. will continue to look at Pakistan from that aspect. I'll be happy if one day I'm proven wrong on this.
Good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Karzai Sharma, working for education sector in Agra. I would like to ask you one thing, that being well-wisher and friend of India, would you like to give some suggestions to Indian government how to face Pakistan? Because frequently ceasefire, we are having so many problems. So can you suggest something to our Indian government?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In my remarks, as I began and I was speaking about India, I mentioned Gandhiji and his statue on the ridge in Simla. Referring to Gandhiji, I had a particular purpose. This meant the impact that Gandhiji's views and ideas and philosophy had on me as a youngster, for peace, for togetherness, for brotherhood. India surely still adheres to Gandhiji's principles, hopefully, and that will try its best to be friends with neighbors, even if some neighbors are not trying to be friends or moving in the opposite direction. So I would not be one of those people who would be belligerent in this regard vis-a-vis Pakistan. No, as much as we are hurt by Pakistan, as much as we suffer from their consequences, their policies with regard to both countries, India and Afghanistan, as much as we feel angry and upset, I still would want the best of relations and all the efforts towards peace.
Good evening, His Excellency. Your proximity. You took the reins of Afghanistan in very testing times, and you did what was the best at that point of time, and drove Afghanistan through that difficult situation. But now, in the hindsight, what are your reflections? If given a second chance, would you act in the same manner, or would you like to do some corrections in the manner you led Afghanistan?
Right, sir. Right, sir. Right. Well, I don't want to return to power. I think I've had enough of power. 14 years is a long time. It's a very long time. I wouldn't want that. But of course, reflecting on the past 14 years and where I was in charge of things in Afghanistan, there are certain changes that I would make to the policies in terms of my own reimagination of the right thing to do. I would not go back to a liberal economy. I would change the economic structure to a degree of state control and planning for it. I would also probably not allow some of the appointments to be done to go through the screening or the approval of the parliament, like the intelligence chief, for example, like the chief justice or others, for example. There are also other issues that probably I could rethink. I was deeply impacted by the American system of governance, which we studied in similar during my student years, the presidential system of government and the separation of powers. So when we were making our constitution, it was very much my desire that Afghanistan becomes a presidential form of government. Because Afghanistan did not have an administration, because we lacked a bureaucracy, because we did not have any proper systems of governance, I thought the presidential government with the authority that the president has would help it, and it did help. But I also very much deeply believe in the beauty and the what is that called? Multi-what? No, not multi-party. Come on. Where society has all sides. Multi-something.
Multi-stakeholder?
No. नहीं जी कुछ और है मेरा काम में बाद में समझ this where the parliamentary system of democracy is a lot more colorful. But for that you need a strong bureaucracy and rigid rules. And unless we reach there, Afghanistan should remain a presidential system. So had we a country that was a bit more stable in bureaucracy and all that, we would have opted for a parliamentary system.
Sir, good evening. His Excellency Karzai sir. I am Dr. Suni Sharma from medical side. No political question. Just my submission is how medical fraternity of Agra can help your country in improving health conditions.
Very good question. Very good question.
Sir, very painful situation. Infant mortality rate is 118. Maternal mortality rate is 330 per million. Doctor-patient relationship is 10 to 1 million. We assure you, we can make certain groups from Agra, 15 doctors for 15 days can go to your country, and at least we can increase the patient-doctor relationship. If you allow us, we can meet your ambassador and we can meet certain program. This is no political question. We just want to help your country and increase our bonding with India and Afghanistan.
Wonderful. Well, our ambassador Saab is here. We'll get in touch with him and he will arrange all the necessary tools for you to do that. Thank you very much. It's one of our very much the greatest of our needs as well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening, His Excellency.
Yes,
welcome to the City of Love. This
welcome.
is Renuka Dang. I'm a dietitian by profession and of course a social worker working for women empowerment and Save the Girl Child. Sir, even I would not talk about politics here. I'll let that remain between New Delhi and Kabul. Where my question to you would be is, now that you're in Agra, how do you think we can take this cultural tie further involving Agra?
Exactly.
Like Agra and Afghanistan, and how can we take this cultural, now that you visited all the heritage sites and monuments, so what do you think, how can we take it ahead?
Right. Well, I was very happy, ma'am, today to see in Agra when I went around the Taj Mahal and then the Agra fort. I was very happy to come across so many Afghan tourists there. Yes, sir. So many. Did you ever imagine we'd have so many tourists? Maybe 5 or 7 groups of tourists, families who came and visited. The exchanges between Afghanistan and India are a great deal. People come here for medical treatment, people come here for education, people come here just to visit Delhi. They just like to come to India.
Yes, sir. I want to move from Delhi to Agra. Focus your attention on Agra, sir. How can we culturally tie here?
Yes. Yes, so let me find ways and then to communicate to you as to how best we can do deepen the cultural relationship between Afghanistan and India. One way is, ma'am, that India begins to act more vigorously to bring peace to Afghanistan. That is by telling the Americans to behave better in Afghanistan and work for peace in Afghanistan. Once we have peace in Afghanistan, Afghanistan can offer tremendous opportunities for the exchange of culture and music and poetry, exchanges of all types. Yesterday I had a young man who's brought me a portrait of mine. Maybe they can set up a school here for Afghan students to come and learn how to better paint, how to make portraits. And also Afghanistan will offer the best sites for your film industry in Mumbai to come and make movies there. Amitabh Bachchan has already been there. He made a movie there. What is that movie called? Khuda Gawah. And I believe others have also made movies there. So we can do all sorts of things. And one important thing is to reignite the tradition of classical singing in Afghanistan, which unfortunately disappeared in the past so many years. We had before that, inspired by India and come from India, a great tradition of classical singers in Afghanistan. So all of that is possible through education and all of that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Jawad from IPCS. Afghanistan is getting close to a crucial election as it was discussed. But in your opinion, do you think will the recent election law that was passed would affect the future of the upcoming results? Thank you.
The election law?
Do you think the recent election law that was passed in Afghanistan would affect the future of the upcoming results?
You mean? I don't think there were some changes into the electoral laws of the country. I don't think that will have an impact. If the elections are held free and fair and without intimidation and from our own side, and if the elections are allowed to be free from foreign intervention, then we will have the results that we are seeking. But if these two conditions are not met, we can't have the results that we expect.
Sir? Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar, ji.
I am Dr. Tarun Sharma. I am teacher. मेरा subject history और political science ही है.
Right.
मैं चाहता हूँ मैं आपसे हिंदी में प्रश्न पूछूं, क्योंकि मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है कि आप भी बहुत देर से हिंदी बोलना चाह रहे हैं और यहाँ भी बहुत सारे लोग हिंदी में आपको सुनना चाहते हैं.
कोशिश करूँगा जी.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. जैसा कि आपने कहा कि you are a very optimistic person.
जी.
तो आपने साथ में ये भी देखा कि पाकिस्तान ये कहा कि पाकिस्तान की इंटेलिजेंस और आर्मी और सब लोग बहुत जल्दी कुछ ऐसा सोचेंगे कि अच्छा हो.
जी.
हम और आप दोनों एक ऐसे देश से हैं जिसकी सबसे बड़ी ज़रूरत आज शांति है. पीसफुल एटमॉस्फेयर चाहते हैं हम लोग दोनों, सबसे बड़ी ज़रूरत है. तो ये क्या जो पाकिस्तान में कुछ आपने ऑप्टिमिस्टिक देखा, ये सिर्फ हमारा और आपका आशावाद है या कुछ वास्तविक संभावनाएं भी दिखती हैं इसमें?
नहीं, संभावना तो नहीं है अभी, मगर आशा है. आशा है, संभावना नहीं है. आशा है. मेहरबानी.
Myself
A.K. Raghav. Myself A.K. Raghav, political science से professor हूँ मैं. I am political science professor in RBS College Agra. I am coming to again in politics. So my question is Pakistan's role in India and Afghanistan relations. How it is acting or affecting the relations of the India and Afghanistan?
Pakistan's role?
Yes.
Well, my friend, Pakistan has been asking us, has not been happy at the strength of relations between India and Afghanistan. But we have told our brothers in Pakistan that India's relationship with Afghanistan and Afghanistan's relationship with India is not Pakistan-centered. It is between the two of us. And it is not intended to, God forbid, bring harm to Pakistan or to reduce from Afghanistan's friendship with Pakistan. No. That the India-Afghanistan friendship is based on the needs and links and bonds of Afghanistan with India and vice versa. That neither has India ever asked us to reduce relations with Pakistan, nor has Afghanistan ever entertained this idea. And that Afghanistan-Pakistan relationship is bound by the links that we have with Pakistan, and that relationship should not be expected by Pakistan to affect India. This has been our position, and we have explained this abundantly, time and time again to Pakistan, and also to the Pakistan's Western allies, including the US. We have had numerous conversations over the years, myself and my team with the US, on why Afghanistan is friendly with India and why Pakistan should not fear this friendship of Afghanistan with India. Rather, it should see it as a positive development and should appreciate it. This has also been one of the issues at times between us and the United States, when the US asked us to reduce relations with India in favor of Pakistan. We said, why? This cuts nothing from our relations with Pakistan, and this India-Afghanistan relation stands on its own merit. Therefore, it will remain as such.
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Parul Agrawal. I am a consultant anesthesiologist and a critical care consultant, and practicing in Agra for last 20 years.
Right.
One thing I would like to ask you, that you have been in India for in your formative years. What do you feel the change in women as compared to the time you were there in India and now? And another thing is, what do you do for women empowerment in your country? Do you think that women in India are more progressive and more educated as compared to women in Afghanistan? Or, in fact, if I would like to say that power of a women in household, is it there's any difference in Afghanistan and in Indian women?
Well, power for women in the household, I think, is the same in Afghanistan and in India. Well, this is a great aspect of our culture that we must cherish. The mothers in India have immense love for their children, and the same is in Afghanistan. They are more in charge at home than hopefully men are, and that's a great thing. But also the change in Afghanistan towards women empowerment in other walks of life, in economy, in politics, and society is rapidly developing. It grew very well in the past 14 years, and the international community also helped in this regard. Women in India have a much older opportunity of educating themselves than we had in Afghanistan. Your education started way back, I believe, for women in the 19th century, and especially in the 20th century. India made tremendous strides in educating its women, especially in all sorts of professions, engineering, medical, and all of that. So the Indian women are much more educated and in much larger numbers comparative to the populations of the two countries than Afghan women. But the Afghan women also are making good strides, and they are moving very fast.
Hello, I'm Dr. Lal from UK. I'm originally from Africa, but
Yes.
I'm a British citizen now
Right.
for 40 years.
Right.
Now, do you think non-violence is a recipe for being a slave? You know, if you look back at history, India has a civilization.
Yes.
And is that a sign of weakness that people attack you and therefore a recipe for slavery kind of thing over the years?
So that's a very important question. The question was whether non-violence would lead to slavery. As India has been a non-violent civilization and it has received so many invasions. No. India has received invasions not because it was non-violent, but because it was attractive. I will go on, but because it was attractive. It was such a massive landmass and a great economy, and a place that anyone could come to and become one of the people, even if it was through an invasion. Look at the amalgamation here. Look at how many people are here. Look at how many generations are here. If you just think of Afghanistan and the Afghan people who are not far away from you, who should naturally hear, but wherever you go, you find an Afghan that has come centuries ago and who is now not recognizable as an Afghan, but who is an Indian and who has flourished here. The same is with Iran, the same is with Turkey, the same is with the rest of the world. And it was not without a reason that the British prided themselves on having the jewel in the crown, was it? It is not that. And the idea of non-violence is perhaps India's greatest contribution to man's civilization. India's greatest no. You are known for softness, for beauty, for most touching aspects of life, music, culture, all that pleases a human sentiment. Gladly you are not known for having thrown a bomb on Hiroshima. So stay away from that and stick to your non-violence. I am one of them, and I will stick to that non-violence.
Those are very, commendable sort of comments that you made for India and how your formative years that you are for, that you still believe in practice. How representative are you for the rest of Afghanistan, being what say 70% of the population would be in this, thinking along your lines as being
non-violent?
Non-violent.
Well, Afghanistan is tired of war. We have suffered because of war. I think we should be among the few people on earth who should desire very much an end to violence and the use of violence, because we have suffered for 4 decades now, constantly at the hands of violence from this or that power. And it was among Afghans that a great compatriot, a great friend of Gandhiji emerged, Pacha Khan, Khana Farhan. So non-violence found a great voice among the Afghan people too, even then.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have to close it over here, but once again, thank you, President Karzai. Thank you very much for...
Thank you very much.